This might be an easy or short answer. I don't know. Roughly, how long did it take you to write this book?
Yeah, I guess it took me. It took me about 2 years, and I'd say that like the first, that wasn't. I wasn't working on only the book that time. And the first year of that especially, I was also writing other, lots of other articles as well. Because the thing about the book is that nobody's gonna get rich writing a book about beavers, right? I mean, that's sort of the thing is that like the publisher basically. So maybe this is more than you want to know, but when you write a book, you basically get paid two different ways. You get an advance, so you get kind of a chunk of money up front, and then you get royalties, which is you get a percentage of each copy that your book sells, and the advance is not very large. You can't. I mean, unless you're really established author, which at the time I was not. You're not going to survive 2 years on the advance for your first book. So I was doing lots of other writing as well to keep money rolling in. I'd say that like the first thing I did when I started was just write. I read a ton of papers. Right, I basically went onto Google Scholar and I just searched Castor canadensis, and I printed out probably 1,000 pages worth of scientific papers about beavers, and I had them all bound into this sort of giant binder that became, my little self-created beaver Bible. So I read all those, spent a lot of time in the library reading, like I said, reading old trappers and explorers accounts. So I probably did, 4 or 5 months of research before I even wrote a word. And then I once I sort of identified the places I want to go, I embarked on this beaver road trip, driving around the country to the various points on that map on page 14, just meeting people and figuring out what exactly was going to be in this book. And so I think that it was probably 2 years from start to finish, and maybe half of that was research and travel, and half was just hunkered down in my office writing.
Thank you. That actually leads into another student question that's on the same topic, or same idea. So was it hard to find data and information? Some of the things that you talk about in your book, we aren't there yet, but they're from a long time ago. So did you find it challenging or hard to write about stuff when some of the material came from a long time ago?
Yeah, totally. That was really challenging. Like I said, to me, a lot of what this book's about is about what our landscapes and ecosystems used to look like and how the trapping of beavers transformed them, right? So to understand how they've changed, of course, you have to have kind of that initial baseline data, right? You have to know what they looked like to begin with, and that's really difficult because, the first people, the first white people, the first people of European descent who came here, were fur traders and trappers who were not scientists. They weren't naturalists. Many of them were not literate, and they just didn't leave behind a whole lot in the way of historical records. And of course, Native people were here for thousands of years, but they have this amazing oral history, but they didn't leave too many written records either. So that was the biggest challenge, was trying to sort of recreate the kind of the historical state of North American ecosystem. So I basically spent months in there's a really cool library. So I used to live in New Haven, Connecticut. There's a great library on the Yale campus called the Beinecke Rare Book Library, which has just kind of randomly one of the largest collections of American Western archival material. So I basically went into the Beinecke basement and just requested all of these old trappers' journals, looking for somebody who had been attentive enough and literate enough to leave behind a really good record of North American landscapes before they killed all the beavers. It was pretty cool. It was like I'd request the trappers, the journals of Peter Skeen Ogden or whoever, and I'd get like a box of like handwritten, unbound papers from 1842 that like crumbled in my hands. It was pretty cool being down there and accessing some of these primary source documents, but also very frustrating because you can like spend an entire day trying to decipher this practically illegible script, only to realize that it contains, nothing whatsoever of value to you. So that can be pretty frustrating. Yeah, so I guess the short answer is that yes, that was the biggest challenge of this book, was sort of recreating those historical ecosystems, and it's something that I wish I had better documentation, and yeah, I'm sure I could have done a better job, but it is what it is.
All right, thank you. So the last two questions for today. Remember that class we're talking about the rhetorical analysis essay. So these two questions deal with, and they're your questions, about why the author made these choices as he wrote. So the first question, and you might remember, Mr. Goldfarb, we did, the first thing, to introduce you, we did that grizzly story about the grizzly attacks, and that's the first piece of writing of yours we did. And there was a piece in there, and we talked as a class about it, that one image of, when they killed the one grizzly bear, they found this undigested mass of human hair in its stomach.
Holy shit, I forgot about that.
Yes. and when we talk about it, the kids were like, oh dear God, that's great. So, and there's a few pieces like that in the article. So I mention that because there's already so far we've got, pieces of imagery in Eager that show, similar sort of thing. So how do you make these choices about what images you're going to share with the reader? This is, again, part of the thing when we're evaluating any text, when we're looking at the writing, looking at the words. Why, we talked about author's purpose yesterday in class, and what was the purpose for this one section? How do you make those choices, if you don't mind sharing that for a moment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that like the one piece of advice I got when I was starting was just write about the things and share the details that, like, if you were at a bar with your friends, what would you tell them? And I think that's a pretty good piece of advice. I mean, if I were going to tell the story of those grizzly attacks to my friend at the bar, I would totally say, and like, I think it's like the nastiest part of this whole thing was like they found this whole clump of human hair in the bear's gut. It's just such a gripping, literally visceral, evocative detail that just sticks with you. And I think that's what I'm looking for is the kinds of things that that just spark emotion in me. Whether that's joy or disgust or sadness or horror. You're just looking to make a kind of an immediate emotional connection with the reader, and you're looking for details that will act in service of that. So for me, the grizzly story was great because those attacks have been so well documented, and there was lots of historical material to draw upon there as well. And I was just, it was such a, and I think that, that at the time, as you might recall in the article, nobody really realized that bears attack people. That wasn't really a thing that people were worried about at all. And this event was it so gripped and horrified the entire nation. I was just looking for details that conveyed the surprise and horror and fear that this provoked, and just the thought of, in some ways it's like it was just such a visceral detail, and it so perfectly captured this sort of the dawning horror of these attacks that I just had to include it. But I'm always just looking for the details that I can't help but tell people, especially my wife, about. And that's if you have, that's really valuable too. If you have a really close friend or a partner or a parent or a sibling, somebody in your life who you can talk about your writing to. That's just so invaluable because she's the most important sounding board for me. And she reads everything I write, and I talk about I work extensively with her, and that's really imperative. So having somebody you can try out these ideas on and say, hey, I was reading this autopsy report from these grizzly attacks, and they found a lump of human hair in the bear's gut. Is that something that should be in the story? And your friend would say, oh yeah, holy shit, that's incredible, and horrifying. So having that person in your life who can help you make choices as an author is really helpful.
All right, thank you. Your wife's right there, isn't she?
Oh, she's at the door.
I was gonna say, all right, 'cause you'll say, well done mentioning your wife in the background. Very good. All right, last.
Right now, the only thing in this room is my new dog we got last week, yesterday.
Show us the dog.
Very good, but yesterday destroyed all of our blinds. We'll probably find an undigested mass of plastic blinds in her gut.
Very good. I was gonna say, I was gonna compliment you on your very nice window, but apparently the dog is to blame for that. So
This had blinds until yesterday. Yeah.
All right, so thank you. Our last question for today, it goes back to like writing and the selections we make and the reasons we do that. And you guys last year, and we haven't talked about it this year, but the idea of logos, pathos, ethos. So logos is going to be, if you remember that last year, which some of you were like making faces. So logos is going to be logic and facts, and ethos is going to be ethics, what's right, what's wrong, and pathos is emotion. So when it came to eager, was there one of the three that you chose to focus on more than the other, and if so, why? And is there an example you can share with us? So again, between logos, pathos, and ethos, was there one thing that really drew you to the book, and something that you try to focus on more than the other two?
That's a really good question, and and this is, I also took various classes in rhetoric in college, and certainly I don't think I was sort of consciously thinking about those three elements as I wrote, but I do think that I had sort of deeply internalized those concepts in college. Speaking about science, obviously, logos is going to dominate. The goal was basically to assemble all of these facts, all of this research that together would make a sort of an airtight case for the importance of these animals. But I also think that it's important. People respond to pathos, to emotion, and I think the goal, in a way, I think the goal was to write in a pathos-rich way that would lead people, that would help sort of like the logos go down easier, right? Because nobody wants to read 250 pages of just straight facts, right? That's not interesting for anybody. I think that people in general connect to other people, and that was the goal of this book. Was basically, in the beaver world, there are all of these beaver believers, right? People who care so strongly about these animals and who've devoted their lives to them. And the stories of those individual people are rich with pathos. So that was sort of the goal, I think, was to make, you'll see more of this as you go through the book, and meet more of these, these kind of off-the-wall characters who love beavers. But I think the goal was to make readers connect with other people, and in so doing, the goal was to sort of let my characters be conduits for these logical arguments. I think if you had the logical arguments by themselves, they would not be very interesting. But if you can sort of talk about the importance of these animals in the context of these sort of emotion-rich personal stories, that's much more compelling in a lot of ways. So that was the goal, was to sort of present the logos in this sort of pathos-rich environment. And then, of course, in the end, the goal is to lead the reader back to this place of ethos, right? Where what is right and wrong? Well, what's right, we know, is working with these animals and letting them exist on the landscape rather than killing them. So that was sort of how I tried to think about those different elements.
That's awesome, thank you. We have a little bit of time left, so I have two last student questions. I'm going to save the worst question ever for last, because why not? So the one that I have on here from one of the students, did you ever have, when you're writing this book, did you have anybody that was so passionately against the idea of working with beavers, helping beavers, saving beavers, that they actually got in your face, that they were aggressive about what you were doing to the point of being, not like necessarily feared for your safety, but they absolutely wanted nothing to do with this, and this is wrong, and all that type of stuff?
That's a good question. The short answer is no. I'm sure there are people who feel that way. It's funny, actually. Just the other day, I was with I went on a beaver relocation here in Washington. With some people who've kind of become friends in the course of writing this book. And we caught this big beaver. We're carrying the beaver back to the truck. and there's this guy walking down the street. He's picking up garbage and putting the garbage into a bag. I'm like, oh, cool. This is like, here's an environmentally concerned citizen who's, out there cleaning up the streets. He'll be into this. So, I went over to him and said, hey, just, we've got a beaver in a cage over there, and we're putting it in the truck. So just a heads up. And he's like, oh, what are you gonna do with it? I was like, oh, we're gonna relocate it high in the mountains where it can create some great wildlife habitat and store some water and be good for the farmers. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, why don't you just shoot the son of a bitch? I think that's like a fairly it's kind of a typical attitude, but I actually didn't encounter it kind of that while I was working the book. I think that most people, I certainly met lots of anti-beaver people in the course of writing my book. But I think that most of them, even if they didn't like beavers, they still respected beavers, right? And it's hard, if you're, a landowner, for example, who, I think it's like page 70 or something like that. This guy, Ed Grahowski, who had basically, lost access to his entire property because beavers had flooded the whole thing and cut down all of the trees that he uses to heat his wood stove, I wouldn't say that this guy, this guy had called for trappers and had beavers killed repeatedly. So, I wouldn't say that Ed likes the beavers exactly, but at the same time, he himself was a former electrical engineer, so he appreciates, good engineering. Even if you don't like the beavers, I think that if you spend a lot of time around them, you can't help but respect them, you can't help but be impressed by their ingenuity and their skill and the foresight they bring to their work. So that's the answer is that I definitely met lots of anti-beaver people, but even the anti-beaver people still had some respect for the animals, and certainly nobody ever threatened me.
Gotcha. We were talking about this yesterday. I was looking for one of my students here. We read a few years ago with a lot of these kids. We read The Omnivore's Dilemma, and so we read that book. And we actually, with one of the groups, we went to the farm and talked about stuff. And we have a local farmer who was amazing when we were discussing with him some of the things in the book and what he thought was right, what he thought was not right. And I remember I was talking to him because this one part of his farm, we looked down and there's this. It's a trout stream. It's a local trout stream. It's pretty good trout stream as they go quality wise. And I said something about beavers. Says no, we kill all of them. And I said okay. And so we'll get into that later with him. I'm looking forward to speak to him to see what he thinks about this book too. But we're just about out of time. I won't ask you the worst question ever. If we get the chance to meet again, we might do that.
No, come on.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you what the student said to me, and then I want you to explain where it came from. Okay. So the first question I looked at, I said, hey, send me questions. The first question I got, it used the phrase beaver butt juice. Okay? And I said, okay. And you know what we're talking about. So who came up with the idea? Where did that come from first, where somebody decided to use that product from a beaver for what they use that product for? Do you know anything about where that came from?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think that's somewhere good, but actually before it got, that's a really good question because that is one of the weirder things out there is the fact that that castoreum, this beaver gland secretion was used in vanilla ice cream and raspberry soda and all kinds of crap. And it's still used widely in perfumes today, actually. Like Chanel has numerous products that feature beaver glandular secretions. Actually, but even before that, it had medicinal use. The Europeans, ancient Europeans, the Romans, used it for everything from epilepsy to constipation to headaches to you name it.
Do we have anybody here that uses Chanel? Anybody that uses Chanel? There you go. There you go. The beaver in the back. Very good. Yeah.
Yourself with beaver butt.
Beaver butt.
And of course that was all sort of like junk science. Somebody's going to cure epilepsy using beaver secretions. But the last thing I'll say, which is really cool, is that beavers, the stuff that's in these beaver secretions comes from beavers' diet, right? It's what they eat goes into their secretions. Makes sense. And they eat a lot of willow, and one of the compounds in willow is salicylic acid. which is the active ingredient in aspirin. It's not total junk science to think that these beaver secretions, which contain lots of salicylic acid, may have some medicinal value. So that's pretty cool. That maybe the Romans knew something more than they let on about beaver butt juice.
Thank you very much. So we are just about out of time. A few minutes left. I want to once again thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. We appreciate it very much, and at least I'll speak for myself. I've enjoyed the book. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to share this book with the students. Everyone, author Ben Goldfarb. Thank you very much.
That's helpful. Yeah, look forward to speaking to you again.
Very good. Thank you. We will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.